He could have been left for dead, but a medic saved his life. 26 years later, he's reunited with that medic. You'll meet the men and hear the unforgettable story on today's edition of Turning Point.
Welcome to our Memorial Day edition of Turning Point. I'm Bob Placey.
And I'm Jennifer Stockey. Today we honor veterans who have put their lives on the line for our freedom. And we'll also be telling you about the Vietnam Memorial coming to Lima, that traveling memorial. And that is a big event that this is coming to Lima.
Bigger than the original people who asked it to come to Lima thought about it.
More than they thought,
it's gotten bigger than that. So looking for almost 250,000 people to go through that in the 3 days it's in Lima. So we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But a great story that just took place this past year, and we just one of those stories that really, as you look at a reunion story, this is one that really touches your heart.
You can't watch this story without tears coming to your eyes, because it's just a beautiful story of God's hand on people's lives.
And the story's even being completed as it continues.
That's right.
The story continues. That's the part we're going to find out about today.
We'll have more of the story for you also. But the story that you're about to see is more than a story about a reunion. It's about faith and the courage of one man in the midst of insurmountable circumstances. John Owens has it from Dayton.
For many who served in Vietnam, if they were among those fortunate enough to return home, they were scarred with horrifying images and crippling memories. But for Lima native Mike Hauenstein, he came back with more than terrifying memories. He came home a disabled man. It was June 17th, 1970, in the Central Highlands of Vietnam. Mike remembers that day.
Beautiful, most beautiful hill you could imagine. That's where I got shot.
The shot went through his spine, leaving him paralyzed, lying on the ground, defenseless, and dying.
And boy, I tell you, when I got shot that day, I knew I was going to hell. It's almost unbelievable. I can just see myself now thinking, Lord, I didn't accept you when I was able-bodied, and I can't accept you now.
Mike would cry out for help, and the help would come from a medic named Paul McCombie. Paul came to Mike's side and stayed with him, protecting him from enemy fire, and saved Mike's life. Mike spent the next 6 months in hospitals, where he was told he'd never have the use of his legs again. Once home, Mike tried to drown his sorrows in alcohol. He also was using a lot of medication to deaden his pain. After 7 long years, Mike stopped trying to mask his pain and found someone who could actually change his broken life. He turned everything over to Jesus Christ. Finally, he found true peace and even in time became a great Bible teacher, impacting many lives.
Listen, whether you like it or not, everybody in this world knows what a Christian should be like. You may try to talk your way out of it, but it won't work. Everybody's looking at you and you say you're
Mike is probably the greatest Christian man I know in terms of his life and his testimony. He lives what he preaches and what he says, and he is the most caring and giving person.
Last year, Mike Hauenstein, a veteran and survivor of countless battles, was told the most difficult battle was ahead of him. He was diagnosed with ALS. Though his mind is as sharp as ever, he's unable to communicate thoughts without the help of his wife or family. But Mike's life continues to touch many lives, so much so that a friend, Bill Gallagher, decided to honor Mike in a very special way. The Lord gave him the idea one night while reading Mike's testimony on a tract.
I think the Lord just impressed on my mind and brought that tract back into my mind and looked at it again, saw the medic's name, and just wondered. I wondered if they'd ever made contact with him.
Bill started his own search for that medic named Paul McCombie, and later he turned to a detective agency, hoping that they would have better success. But week after week, there was no response, and Bill gave up hope.
And about 2 months later, he called me 2 days before Christmas, and it was not even in my mind to be looking for him at that time. And the birthday party and a special tribute to Mike was already underway, planned for New Year's Eve.
Finally, the 26-year wait came to an end right here at Charity Baptist Church. Mike Hauenstein was reunited with the medic that saved his life.
Michael, and ladies and gentlemen, from 26 years ago. Paul McCombie, medic, that came to Mike's rescue.
Paul, would you come on in?
When I was up there on the platform and just moments before Paul come up, and I knew that that moment was about to occur, you know, that was kind of the dream that I'd thought of maybe 6 or 7 months before. And it really was exhilarating to see that happen.
And when did you actually realize it was Paul, though? Right then, you knew. He had nothing on his mind except hurry up and get up here.
What it really did for me is, you know, sometimes you wonder whether the Lord is using you, whether or not you're having an effect. You know, sometimes those of us that, you know, work for a living and kind of pull the 40-hour work week don't seem to realize what our impact is and what it can be on other people's lives. And what it did for me and my whole family was show us that the Lord uses everybody.
But the story doesn't end there. Just 2 weeks after Mike was reunited with Paul, Paul accepted Jesus Christ as his Savior. 26 years after Paul saved Mike's life in Vietnam, Mike would have influence on saving Paul's soul for eternity.
A blessing. After 19 years of praying for him, to have him get saved.
Mike Hauenstein, veteran, father, servant of Jesus Christ, and proof that God does answer prayers of those who diligently seek Him. Reporting from Dayton, I'm John Owens for Turning Point.
What a miraculous story. And the other side of this is that of that medic, Paul McCombie. Paul lives in Louisiana now and has an important story to share also. We were so fortunate to have him in our area for today's show. Paul, thank you so much for being here.
It's my pleasure.
We're so glad. Now, I can't watch that story. I have to look away because the tears just come to my face and seeing what God has done. And I can't imagine the emotion that all this must bring to you when you witnessed that reunion one more time. What was it like when that happened for you?
Well, it was the most profound thing that's ever happened to me. It erased a lot of the Vietnam memories that I had, and replaced good memories. So,
does that happen with a lot of Vietnam vets who have been separated from platoon buddies for 15, 20 years, and then there is a reunion? Does it help with the memories, or does it bring them all back?
I would think it would be a tremendous help. I mean, you can talk to people about Vietnam who have not been there, and they don't really understand. You talk to people that have been there, but not in your platoon, and you've had different experiences. But if you can reunite with somebody in your platoon, that's when you get things straightened out in your head that, you know, have bothered you for a long time.
It has to almost, I mean, seem like a divine appointment of God that Bill called you and said, I want you to come for this reunion with Mike, because you really weren't living for the Lord when you came to Dayton from Louisiana. I mean, you didn't know Christ, you weren't in church. What happened?
Well, I was sitting home and the phone rang, and a detective asked me, he said, "Are you Paul McCombie?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Were you in Vietnam?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Do you remember Mike Hauenstein?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I think of Mike all the time." And he said, "You are the hardest man to find."
They've been looking for you for a while, haven't they?
For months and months and months. And so then he gave me Bill's number, and Bill and I spoke, and he told me that Mike's birthday was on New Year's Eve, and so I flew up there for that, and that's when we had the reunion.
Did you anticipate anything happening in your own life other than just being reunited with Mike?
I had no idea of the changes. I don't know, before you know the Lord, it's two different lives, you know. things that were important then aren't important now, and things, you know.
How did that happen? What kind of impact did Mike have on your life? Is he continuing to have?
Well, just as an example, you know, if you could be half the person that Mike is, I think everybody should aspire to that. And, you know, I can't think of anything, any influence he's had on anybody that wasn't a good influence. And how many people can say that? You know, very few.
How did you feel when you heard that he had been praying for you for 19 years?
I heard that yesterday. I didn't know that until yesterday. So I was shocked.
And God does answer prayer, because you went back to Louisiana after the reunion, just this past January. You went back to Louisiana. What happened?
Well, before I left, Mike cornered me and beat on me about the Lord.
Did they show you the track?
No, he just got his Bible out and asked me, you know, if I knew I would go to heaven if I died. And I said no, and so we went through that, and then I got home, and a few days later a Bible arrived. And you know, at that time I had no interest in the Bible. I'd never read the Bible, and didn't intend to. But Mike sent it, so I said, well, I better take a look at this. And I read it, am still reading it, and Brother Bill sent some mailbox club lessons that are probably for children, but I was a child. And that showed me how to be saved also, and that was very helpful.
And you, at that point in time, you received Christ as your Savior?
On February 6th, yes.
When did you let Mike know about your decision?
On February 7th. I thought they would all be in church that day, so it got later and later, and I pretty much knew what days they went to church and what times they went to church, and it was too late to call that night. So I called the next day, but oddly enough, they'd had church like Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, so they didn't have it this Thursday, and they were all at Mike's house. So if I had known that, Bill and Linda, Sue, Mike, all the kids were all over there. But told him the next day.
What'd that feel like? I mean, knowing that here's a guy that's had this influence, he sent you the Bible, you begin reading that, and you're going to share that news with him. What did that feel like?
Well, he keeps telling me what a hero I am and how I saved him. Well, as it turns out, he's the hero. He saved me, you know, and he saved so many other people.
Tell us about the ornament on your neck there.
Okay, this is a dog tag. I gave Mike for the reunion. I gave him a dog tag that said, "Life is good."
You just wanted to be an encouragement to him.
Just tried to be an encouragement. Well, when I came up last time, after I'd been saved, he gave me this dog tag, which says, "Life is good, eternal life is better."
That says it all, doesn't it?
That does say it all.
There's
yes.
a real encouragement.
Is life better for you now?
It is. It surely is, yes.
Well, we know that the whole family and Bill and everyone is so happy with the way that the Lord has put everything together. And Bill is going to join us in just a minute, and we'll be talking more with Paul, and we'll also find out what else can be done to help Vietnam veterans through some of the difficult times. Don't go away. We'll be right back. If you've been with us in today's show, you witnessed an amazing reunion of two Vietnam veterans, one who saved the other man's life, and one who saved the other man's life.
Right. Eternal life and real life. And as you saw in that feature, the story that was up there to begin with Mike, Bill Gallagher was talking about reading this tract right here of Mike's life, his experiences in Vietnam, and read the name Paul McCombie in there, and decided to contact him. And Bill, that was quite a search, wasn't it?
It was. It was one of those things that I guess I didn't really expect it to pan out.
Did you see beyond just the reunion of I want to do this for Mike? Did you have any idea at all that was going to result in in Paul or someone else coming to Christ in this case? Maybe many people as they watch this story.
Not initially, but knowing Mike, I guess I'm not at all surprised.
But this was something that you felt just a desire to do, that the Lord planted this in you?
Well, I believe certainly it was the Lord that did it, but even at the point in time when I first thought of it, just the thought of, reuniting two people that hadn't seen each other in so long, and it was just one of those things that you kind of dream about, at night, this great reunion happening, and then it actually came true. It was just wonderful.
Paul, have you ever been reunited with anybody else, any of your old buddies in the platoon?
No, we've not been able to locate anyone else.
So this is pretty unusual then. Have you, as you look at the reuniting, just the work of that, did you run into anybody else that says this is almost an impossible thing to do these days?
No, it wasn't like somebody said it can't be done. In fact, there are a number of organizations set up to do reuniting type, find your buddy kind of organizations, and some of those were very helpful. I did emails and wrote to the VA, and many people wrote me back, giving me leads. All of those turned out to not pan out, but many organizations were helpful in trying to. There are a number of veteran organizations that continue today to, assist in reuniting people.
Well, you've talked with you've talked with veterans groups since you participated in this reuniting and saw how important it is and what a difference it can make in people's lives.
It really seemed to be important. Just the following couple of weeks after our reunion in Dayton, the president of the local chapter of the Vietnam Vets Association called our church, and then I subsequently got to talk to them, and they invited me to their next chapter meeting. And these guys, who seemed very rough cut and like they have a hard life, were very appreciative. I mean, they look like a bunch of tough guys. But when I got to talking about the reunion, what happened, they all had tears in their eyes, were all crying about it. And it meant a great deal to them, very much so.
I mean, guys have a tough time talking to one another anyway about things that they've been through, but is there, I mean, as you talk about this healing, Paul, that as you met Mike, you see a lot of guys out there that really are hurting, and in a reunion like that really could bring about some resolution for them?
I think it could, yes, but it's so hard to find these people. I mean, hardly anybody lives in the same town they did when they were drafted or joined the military. And, I don't even remember what state a lot of these guys are from. So he was able to find me just by my name, which was a miracle. But I don't know, you need a lot more than that to go on to find these people.
Well, if a reunion like this then is obviously not a possibility for everyone, what about the role that the Lord has had in your life to heal some of what you brought home from Vietnam?
Well, I think this all didn't just happen all of a sudden. It happened 26 years ago on that mountain.
And God has a great plan for your life. And Bill, as you see that take place, when you heard about Paul receiving Christ, what did you think at that point?
It was, well, I think once we knew that Mike was on Paul's trail, I mean, it was a matter of time for him. But it was just wonderful the day that he called us and told us all about it. But what I see has happened as a result of this reunion, I mean, it softened Paul's heart, obviously, and opened it up in a way that nobody else, I believe, could have ever approached him about spiritual matters prior to this reunion experience. But the whole aspect of the healing and the recovery of the bad things of Vietnam were replaced by this wonderful reunion, and I think that certainly opened the door to this spiritual reunion with Christ.
Yeah. Nobody really understands what they've been through unless they've been there themselves, except for Jesus Christ. And he does understand where your heart is, doesn't he, Paul?
Yes, he does.
Well, it sounds like it was well worth all the time and the trouble that you put into making this a possibility.
I can't begin to explain how this story continues to grow and expand beyond people that have never met Mike, Paul, or any of us have seen the the tape that we've had. We taped the entire New Year's Eve service. And they don't know anybody, and they'll watch it and just cry about the whole thing. It's wonderful.
Well, it's an amazing story. It did make the AP wire for that day. It was a national story.
Yeah, so it was a complete surprise, actually, to everyone in our church except a few people. And I did call the Dayton Daily News, told them would they be interested in this story, and they sent a reporter and a photographer, and they did a wonderful story, which did run in the AP.
Well, it is going to go well beyond that night of that reunion as more and more people see that and trust Jesus Christ with their life. Thank you both for coming and sharing. All the way from Louisiana. Glad to have you here,
Yeah, we're
Paul.
so glad you're able to be here with us also.
It's my pleasure.
When we come back, we'll tell you about the memorial traveling to Lima. We'll give you all the details in just a minute.